specifically because it's more so about individuals, and if individuals choose to opt out, can't really regulate Bitcoin itself, the network. What you can really regulate are the on and off ramps, right? They have tremendous amount of control over the on and off ramps, but the actual network itself, when someone's in the Bitcoin network, can't really, you can't really touch them. And Jason, from my perspective, again, I cover it more from the media angle. I think that there's going to be an inevitable clash because of exactly what you just said. They're going to want to retain that monetary policy, but if a good portion of the country is opting out altogether, how's their reaction going to be towards that? And I'm sure the thought, like, these are already things that have crossed their minds for sure. So, from your perspective, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, I think it's so fascinating that we get a chance to talk about it because, in a sense, there's that expression in this space like this is an inevitable conversation. Like, of course, at some point, Bitcoin got big enough where it caught the attention of our regulators and policymakers and the media to say, well, wait a minute, we don't necessarily want people opting out. And very often, what opting out means to you and me means something very different to somebody in the Treasury Department or to Chair Gensler at the SEC. What that means, what Gensler has described, and he doesn't talk about Bitcoin, he talks more about stable coins, is if people are using things, off the typical fiat rails, that means that they're either a drug dealer or they're a terrorist or they're doing something nefarious. And that's a bad way to look at things. And unfortunately, our country's done that since like the 1980s, right? Like with cocaine traces on dollar bills, we've got freaked out about, what cash meant. I mean, it was in the 70s and 80s, you could have your cash confiscated from your briefcase by somebody in Treasury if there was cocaine traced on your cash and you didn't get that money back. And then we had 2001 with the terrorists. So everyone's looking at it from the security angle. And it's a really dangerous place to go. And it does, touching on the on and off ramps, the on and off ramps really is where they want to touch, the KYC of who's involved. But when we talk about setting monetary policy, right, as you know, like the monetary policy now in the U.S. is based on, the fiat system and the Fed making these decisions for us, and so these levers that they pull, to them, it's critical to them that they maintain that capability.
Well, that sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you. That
No.
that's how they pay for themselves. This is deficit spending. Like, they need to be able to print money in order to be able to pay for the government in the first place. And that's why I think, Jason, like, this is such it, I think it breaks like something here. There's going to be a clash. I think it's inevitable. I think as more people opt out because Bitcoin just has better incentives, right? It's a deflationary life versus an
Mhm.
inflationary life where your purchasing power just decreases over time. I think that that's going to be an actual topic of conversation, like that. And I don't know if the administrative state is going to be willing to swallow that pill. That's a very, very big, hard pill to swallow for them. So, what are your thoughts on that? And again, like, you're in this unique perspective, man. You are in the belly of the beast. You are in the imperial city. What is your perspective on that?
Yeah. I don't think they get to that point of being able to accept that people use other currency than the US dollar. My personal opinion is what happens is you see them roll out a CBDC, and I'll say it now. If it happens 4 or 5 years from now, it'd be the greatest shitcoin of in the world, like Barnum Bailey Circus, top notch. Like nothing like what Facebook was trying to do. If you think about it, right? Facebook didn't let crypto ads on their platform, and then they tried to introduce their own currency. And the U.S. government came in 2019 and stopped Facebook. Said, no, wait a minute, we get to print the money. So I think they're going to look to the digital platform and try to like do airdrops and get people to buy in to using CBDC as opposed to Bitcoin. That doesn't make Bitcoin go away. In my opinion, that makes it an asset and even a more valuable asset, because I think what people ultimately have to realize is they're going to have to maybe take a step back and recognize that we're at a pivot point in terms of what money is and what it's all about. and realize that Bitcoin, there very well might be a Bitcoin standard that has to be accepted. Now, are they going to, you're asking me like I'm in, the belly of the beast. I mean, there's tons of swamp creatures around there, and I like to think of myself more as an orange, good guy in the picture of things. But like there is an immense apparatus that, as you say, it depends on, and it isn't just the monetary policy, right? It's the sanctions. It's using the U.S. dollars for foreign policy goals with sanctions. So, in their people's minds, that means that U.S. soldiers don't have to go die in wars. There's a lot tied to the U.S. dollar. I mean, the $100 bill is still the most used paper currency around the world, anywhere. So it's kind of like, it makes me think a lot, and I've thought about this before, like with Great Britain. Like, would Great Britain be able to figure out, or which they didn't, right? That they couldn't necessarily rely on their Royal Navy anymore as the world changed. They sort of lost themselves as the power over the world. And I think the U.S. is at risk of doing that when it comes to this specific subject. I don't, I'll give you one other example as to why I don't think they get there. There's a very interesting, people can look it up, your audience can look it up, on NIST. So NIST, National Institute of Science and Standards and Technology, NIST actually are like the computer scientists in the government. They actually created a fork of Bitcoin. You can look at it, where they were experimenting to see how there might be admin controls. It wouldn't be perfect like the way Bitcoin is, but it would be using the model of Bitcoin to help run the Federal Reserve and make sure that different people had different votes over monetary policy, which I thought was a pretty neat attempt at it. But a couple of years ago, that program essentially got shut down, and the Federal Reserve just stepped in, and now they're just been focused on CBDCs. So
it's fascinating because the gatekeepers, the intermediaries, are trying to reason and trying to come up with a solution to a non-problem just to justify their existence. And it's fascinating watching them going through this process. And I really think that they really believe that they built themselves such an impenetrable moat that I don't think they could have ever have conceived this happening. And there's so many people in positions of power and people that have been in government their entire lives and employed that, it was always the foreign enemy. They could have never met. I don't think they could have ever of realized that it's something like Bitcoin. It's this decentralized peer-to-peer, currency that they can't make it go away. And they're going to have to compete with its incentives. Are they going to be able to match them? I don't think so. I think they're always going to want to debase, and they're always going to want to control. And if they don't give up those things, then what incentive do people have? And I think that this is going to be more apparent in developing countries where they don't have a good alternative to Bitcoin. All right. Here, we kind of have a relatively stable fiat currency. The rails make it extremely comfortable to use. Right. You can play mental gymnastics as to why you're going to continue using it.